This is a review of the Gamesir G8 Plus Galileo Bluetooth controller. This is a review unit sent to me by Gamesir, but this is not a sponsored video and they do not get to see the video before it's released. If you want my too long didn't watch take on it, if you don't mind the larger size and weight, this is an excellent controller and I can easily recommend it. For starters, it comes in this box with the controller itself, 3 of the standard analog sticks, one of which is longer than the other 2, 1 GameCube style analog stick, and this tiny analog stick. Below the controller, there is a box with some instructions and a pretty nice USB-C to A cable. The controller itself is very similar to an Xbox controller. It shares that controller's ABXY layout, the bumpers and triggers are shaped very similarly, and the feel of all those are also close to identical. The D-pad is a clicky style D-pad like you'd find on an Xbox One controller or the Vita, but it's springier and has more resistance than both of those. The analog sticks feel pretty close to an Xbox controller, although they definitely have less resistance and are a little bit lighter to the touch. You can swap them out by lifting off these magnetically attached shells and then pulling off the analog stick. You can see the module they use here, and it's apparently a Hall effect mechanism which supposedly will prevent drifting over the long term. You can actually also swap out the button labels too. And one more thing to note, the sticks also have the standard L3 and R3 click. The controller has 2 back buttons that can be assigned to any of the buttons or even a series of button presses by holding this M button and one of the back buttons. Then once the light is blinking white, you press the button or buttons you want, and then the back button again. And from there, pressing that button will activate the buttons you programmed at the same speed you press them when programming. I should also note that the back buttons feel great and aren't nearly as stiff and unpleasing as the Steam Decks. Finally, it has a gyroscope so you can use motion controls with the switch, and it has vibration motors so you can get force feedback on games that support it. Overall, the unit is pretty big for a phone mount controller, and it really feels like you're using a full-size Xbox controller. In fact, it's ever so slightly more bulbous in the hand grips. The controller connects via Bluetooth or wired USB-C and can be used with an iPhone, an Android, or the Switch. I personally only tested it on my iPhone 13 Pro Max and my Switch OLED. The unit turns on as soon as you extend the controller to mount your device and will automatically connect to the last used system. If you want to manually select which system it connects to, you use this button on the bottom left and hold one of the face buttons depending on which system it is. And if you wanted to change to a different phone or a different Switch, you'd use the Bluetooth pairing button down here. And if you want to use it wired with a Switch, you can use a USB-C to C cable and have a direct connection. Now, as far as what I like about the controller, I think foremost that it is just a very nice feeling controller. I would say that the latest Xbox controller is probably my favorite, and this feels really similar to that. I previously used the Backbone mobile controller, and I have a fair bit of experience with it. And as far as feel goes, this is a noticeable step up. I was a little worried about the latency of the Bluetooth connection seen as I was coming from the direct connection of the Backbone, but I played Theater Rhythm on the Switch, and I was able to hit all the notes no problem without any extra calibration. On that note, once you've paired the controller to your phone, it's honestly remarkable how quickly it connects. You don't even have to press anything because it automatically turns on and connects as soon as you slide the controller open to mount your phone. And as soon as you close the device, it turns off. You don't get the extreme ease of connection that you do with the Backbone since you do have to do an initial pairing. But once you do, you get the same connection speed and much more compatibility since you don't have to worry about having the right port. On that note, there is plenty of space for big camera bumps and it extends really far, so you could potentially even use it with smaller tablets. Right now on Amazon, it's selling for $80 with a 5% coupon you can check, which is a fair bit cheaper than a Backbone. With the range of devices you can use this with, I think that's a reasonable price and it's a very nice quality controller. Now, for things I don't like and trade-offs that had to be made for this form factor. First off, the obvious balance you're dealing with in these phone mount style controllers is size versus feel. Well, this controller feels fantastic and is very similar to a full-size Xbox controller. The trade-off is that it's heavy and not particularly small and portable. It's 11 ounces as opposed to an Xbox controller's 10 ounces and a Backbone's 5 ounces. And if you have a heavy phone like I do, you're looking at holding a total weight of 20 ounces, which is 5 ounces heavier than a Switch with Joy-Cons attached. It's also substantially larger than a Backbone, so you're probably not going to be putting this in your pocket. While the analog sticks are fantastic, this still suffers from the same problem all of these mobile controllers do, which is that the D-pad and right analog stick are not further towards the center like a normal controller. So if you're playing an FPS or if you want to use the D-pad, it's not going to feel quite as good, and your thumbs are going to feel like they're at the edge of the controller, as opposed to the more natural center of the controller. As I mentioned earlier, the fact that this controller uses a Bluetooth connection means that you have a good range of compatibility. But the downside is that you lose out on the pass-through connections like the backbone, where you can have wired headphones hooked up and even charge your phone while you're using it. If you're going to be using it without a phone case, I did notice my phone slipping out ever so slightly. The grip is solid, but it's not like a death grip. If you dropped it, I would be worried about your phone flying out. With the case, this is not a problem. So, as far as my take on the controller, I think it's great. I had no expectations going in, but it's been very rock solid in my time using it and feels very solidly built. I've only had one quirk with it so far in the games I've tested, and that was with Final Fantasy VII on iOS. Moving up and down with the analog stick seems to be broken, but a similar thing happens with the backbone, so I'm inclined to believe that it's a problem with the game itself. My main worry with the Bluetooth controller as opposed to a direct connection was that pairing would be a pain, but it connects astonishingly quick once you have it set up, and it turns off on its own when you're done, which is just a very smart design. Another concern with the Bluetooth controller is the controller itself needs to be charged. I haven't used this for the literal years I have for many of the other things I've reviewed, so I can't give you my long-term experience, but in the week I've been testing it, I only charged it once and it's still chugging. If you got the space for it in your bag, you don't mind the heavier weight, and you like the Xbox controller, I think you'll like this. And that's it. I hope this review has been helpful. There's an Amazon affiliate link for the controller in the description below. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a good one.